I was amongst the last of my ilk on our star vessel Reaper. It was a shadow of what we used to create, a pathetic corvette, limping from the damage of the war earned in battle, yet untouched by the necromancy of the heretics. Long gone were the days we sailed the void with our destroyers, cruisers, and dreadnoughts. It was a recent memory, but it could not have felt more distant. I allowed my eyes to scan the bridge of my ship, the navigator looking as disheveled and withered as I felt, and from the captain's chair I could see that the measly ghost crew of this star-forsaken glorified raft felt no different. What had happened to our glorious peoples? They strayed. No longer did they remember the old ways, and those who refused to stray from the path were branded cultists. If I was a cultist for keeping to our paths after the blasted aliens took over, then I could live and die with that knowledge. I cast my mind back to where it all began as I watched the brilliant light of subspace reflect around the bridge of the Reaper. We had encountered a new species, and as we always do, we encouraged them to join us, extended a hand of welcome to them, with our only requirement the same as ever, adapting to our ways and abandoning any sacrilege. As was often the case, in the most stubborn of species at least, they refused. It was foolish. They were a fledgling star empire, estimated to barely have a firm grasp on 3-star systems, with a few newly birthed colony worlds still learning to be self-sufficient. We were legion, hundreds of systems, and enough ships to blot out the stars of their cradle world, and yet they persisted. It should have been an easy war, and though I never experienced combat myself, the soldiers who returned maimed from battle claimed they were hard fighters, stubborn to a fault, unwilling to meet their end as expected, and when it came to it, dragging as many into the final singularity as they could. It was ugly, but the war was predicted to be over in no more than a year. But the ships just kept coming, and every time they came back stronger with better weapons, some seemingly stolen from our own losses, in a disgusting brand of heresy, repurposing the corpses of our fleet for their own ends. With the monstrous fleet they quickly conquered our worlds, pushing back our formerly impenetrable defenses and robbing our homes from under us. They would tell a different story, of course, that they liberated the worlds, that they fixed our peoples with their sacrilege. They likely believed they saved us from ourselves, a deluded messiah with a god complex, riding the high of victory as long as they could, uncaring to those that were discarded and forgotten amongst the battlefield. But our laws remained, ideas could not be killed, and our most important law was one I carried with us and the crew on board. What dies is to stay dead. What is destroyed is to remain destroyed. Anything taken by decay or death is rightfully theirs, and to take it from them is to welcome their ire. My thoughts broke from the past and returned to the present as subspace faded from before me, and my eyes absorbed the place I wanted to meet the singularity. In the void before me, a blue marble stood before me, surrounded by defenses of cold steel and the filthy black star metal of our own remains blended between them. What is destroyed must remain destroyed, and to take ships claimed by death is to earn his ire. These arrogant newcomers would learn this in time. I felt irritation burn in my skin as I took in the sight of our conquerors before me, and I audibly growled at the sound of beeping coming from the command chair, signaling that several escape pods had just ejected. Cowards and traitors, the lot of them, but they were irrelevant now. It didn't take long for a vessel of the heretics to approach us, sadly at a distance too far to be at peril, but close enough to keep the weaker of their kind from approaching, fools the lot of them. This is the TSV Bulwark hailing the Reaper. I'd ask you to power down your weapons, but it would seem you crazy cultists haven't got any. Power down your engines and surrender, and you will be treated fairly and rehabilitated. Refuse, and you will be chased out of Terran space. Terran space. It filled me with disgust that it held such truth. Once the void was ours to claim, and they were a mere trespasser. Now it would seem they were the sovereign, and we were no more than a peasant. but surrendering is something I would never do. It had been the downfall of my kind, and I would sooner meet the singularity than give up my beliefs to this new empire. We will not power down, heretic. We came here to face our conquerors in our last moments, to remind you the fate that awaits you no matter what you do. Always a breath away. Watch closely and remember one day you will be in our place. He closed the channel to the bulwark abruptly and opened a channel to engineering. Send us to the singularity. I watched as the damned idiots overloaded the subspace core of the Reaper and didn't break eye contact as I watched the crew who hadn't ejected met the cold embrace of death. He was so present in the silence on the bridge, it was a miracle I couldn't see the shadow of his scythe in the corner of my eye. Damned fools. Never know when to give up. At least the smart ones are still on their worlds. Get the occupants of those escape pods into custody and send us out back to Tartarus Station for drop-off. These zealots are too dangerous to be dropped on an unsuspecting colony this soon. I stood up abruptly and strolled out of the bridge, headed towards the captain's cabin. Inside, my facade of the controlled, steady captain broke and I collapsed into a chair. Today was far too much for me. I boiled some tea for myself and felt the tension ease after a few sips, if only a little. Shunt. The door to my cabin slid open, and inside strolled my XO. Normally, the captain's quarters could only be opened by the captain, but she'd grown to be my confidant and friend. Her advice and words alone could soothe me when I needed them most, and as I looked up at her, probably appearing as haggard as I felt, I could see she understood. I know the war with the Xenos weighs on you, Captain, but there was nothing to be done. It wasn't what anyone wanted, and we didn't have a real choice. What were we supposed to do? What is destroyed is to remain destroyed, they said, with no idea what we would be giving up. Our machines would be worthless rusted scrap in a few years without maintenance. And worse still, our patients and wounded would die cold and alone when they could still be saved. Every doctor would have to abandon their oaths, and every human would have to abandon their morality. Of course, we fought. We had to. With any other crew member, I would have agreed, kept a stoic appearance, and shown unflinching confidence. But she was the only one I could trust to carry my burdens here, and I wasn't going to deceive her. It's not so simple. When they came to us, they wanted to share the stars with us. They offered us their homes, their technology, their culture. They wanted friends as badly as we did, and their only crime was believing in the wrong religion. I just wonder if we'd joined them, tried to convince them, then burning the universe with this war. She grew steelier at this, and drew herself up as she addressed me, firmer than before. Those zealots would never have changed their mind, and with the powers they wielded, they never would have listened to us. And even had they, think of the souls we would have had to abandon to death, whilst we tried in vain to convince those who considered themselves our betters. This war was a test of ideas on a grand scale. They believed nothing could be reclaimed or restored, that you could not fight death. We disagreed. They left empty husks of ships, let their wounded die, and executed those in too much pain to continue, and in return, the universe punished them by allowing us to crush that idea. We decided to create and heal, maintain. We kept our ships at our best, never let a soldier die alone, bleeding if we were in a position to help. We left no man behind, and spared no resource, ours or theirs. When all was said and done, the universe favored us, and for all our faults, this is one thing we were unquestionably right about. I felt my heart sink at her words. She was right, and I hated she was right. The war had taken lives on all sides, been a meat grinder of pain and misery. True to her words, they left the fallen where they lay, whilst we crawled into the mess and carnage and raised our own back up. They had more, but we kept our few fighting, both with our cause and with our tools. That didn't mean I had to like it. I saw her shift once again, and the stern side of my XO seemed to fade, giving way to a softer look once again, reserved for my rare moments of vulnerability. No, Captain, You don't have to like it. She was always good at guessing my thoughts. It made her a great XO. War is hell, and we shouldn't forget it, and the sacrifices and cost of the conflict, but that doesn't mean it wasn't worth it. I nodded at that. Perhaps she had a point, and after a sip of my tea, I looked up to see her hand offered to me. I pulled myself up and pulled myself together, feeling the confidence of my role return to me. She grinned. That's it, Captain. The bulwark is estimated to be at Tartarus in roughly 2 hours for prisoner transfer. After that, we go back to defending our worlds as we always have. After all, she reached out her arm once again and rested it lightly on my shoulder, grin never dropping. We have far more people to defend now. They have much to learn about medicine and the cycle of life and death, decay and rebirth. Best we keep the pale horse and its rider from them, as we do our own, until they can face him off as we did, as we always will do.